everything you think about engineering school is wrong, or is it? Today we're going to put your assumptions to the test and see if maybe you shouldn't go to engineering school, or maybe you should, or maybe you shouldn't. Let's find out. Hey and welcome back to my channel. My name is Anna and I'm a German mechanical engineer based in Sweden. During my engineering studies, I've seen a lot of people be surprised by what engineering school is really like. Sometimes in a good way, sometimes in a bad way. So to avoid this at least for you, I thought I would take a look at different assumptions I've heard about engineering school and give you my honest, unfiltered opinion. I will focus on mechanical engineering since that is what I do, but things are pretty similar across different engineering studies. I've selected 5 different assumptions. So let's get started. Assumption number 1. You will be tuning cars or building robots all day. When I told people I'm going to study mechanical engineering, a lot of them asked me if I do things like tune cars in my free time, build robots, do metal work, you name it. And likewise, a lot of my fellow students were surprised by how theoretical engineering school was, especially in the first few years, and how much time we would spend in front of a computer versus doing anything physical. This is because engineering at its core is not about building things, but about designing things. Of course, you need to understand how things are built to make sure that the things you design can be built. But unlike, for example, a mechanic, your main skill set will not be the physical making of things, but the theoretical design of them. For example, if I was working at a company that makes electric kettles, my job as an engineer might be to design the components of the kettle and how they fit together, decide which materials should be used, calculate how many screws are needed, select with which process each of the components will be manufactured, and how they will be assembled. My job will probably not be to physically build or assemble anything, unless I am building a prototype to test the design or functionality of the kettle. So I will spend most of my time in front of a computer and maybe some of my time physically making something. And the same is true for university. The focus of engineering studies is on the design part, on making calculations, doing simulations, understanding how forces act on an object, learning about different types of materials and manufacturing processes, creating 3D models and technical drawings of objects, basically learning all the core skills you need to design mechanical parts. But it obviously helps to know how things are made to be able to design useful things. So for my engineering studies, we had to do a mandatory internship at a factory to learn metal processing methods like filing, drilling, turning, and milling. And it's quite common, especially for German technical universities, to require this sort of internship for mechanical engineering students. And we also had some practical projects where we, for example, built an autonomous vehicle or 3D printed something that we designed. But this will likely not be the majority of what you'll be doing at engineering school or later at your job. Assumption number 2. You will do nothing but study all day and night. Yeah, so this one is unfortunately kind of true. There's a lot of studying involved in engineering school. At the Technical University of Berlin, where I studied mechanical engineering, we actually get to plan our own schedule and choose which classes we want to take in the next semester from a list of mandatory and optional classes. When I first selected classes for my very first semester, my schedule looked pretty empty and I thought maybe I should just take some more classes. But I got the advice from a senior student that classes were only a small part of all the studying I would have to do. There would be a lot of self-studying and homework assignments that I would have to do by myself. So I should better leave a lot of buffers for that in my schedule. And luckily I did, because they were not joking. University is not like high school where you just go to classes all day and then do a little bit of homework in the afternoons. I had maybe about 20 hours of class time in my first semester, but during semester prime time I easily spent up to 60 hours per week on my studies. Of course, not the whole semester is prime time, but if your schedule is already completely packed in a regular week, you won't have any time and energy left when there's a deadline approaching or exam week coming up, or both if you're lucky. So be prepared to study a lot and manage your own time. Assumption number 2. You don't need any social skills or interests besides engineering. Everyone knows about the stereotype of the socially awkward engineer who cares about nothing but math and science. And sure, these kinds of positions exist, and you can certainly get away with being a little bit less social in engineering, or even a lot less social. And since you will likely be working a lot as an engineer, you maybe don't need to have a million hobbies and interests besides it. But in my experience, the majority of engineering jobs are actually both quite social and intersecting with a lot of different disciplines. So it can make you a better engineer to have some amount of social skills and a variety of interests. This is because engineers almost never work alone. We usually work in teams of different kinds of engineers, quality controllers, salespeople, project managers, purchasing experts, finance people. So you need to be able to communicate with all of them, explain your field of expertise in a way that they can understand, and also develop an understanding for all of their areas of expertise. So it really helps to be curious about the other aspects of a business or even completely other fields. And this is also reflected in engineering school. We had to do a lot of group assignments and projects together with other students. Sometimes only engineering students, sometimes a wild mix. Here are some examples of what I had to do in group projects: solving math problems together, designing a transmission, writing a CNC machine program, simulating the thermal behavior of a solder joint, and analyzing the human-machine interface of a public transport app. So both in university and on the job, there are problems that you can only solve as a team, and there's a lot of peripheral knowledge that you need to teach yourself to be able to complete the project. Assumption number 4. You need to have top grades to find a job. I think this one really depends on the kind of engineering you want to do and whether or not you want to work at a large, super prestigious corporation. But I have not found this to be true. Personally, I have never been asked for my university grades except after my bachelor when I was applying to my master's. But for any student jobs I did during my studies and for the full-time job I have now, I never had to show my grades. In my experience, companies care more about what kind of projects you did and what learnings you took from them and your general engineering mindset. They care that you understand the engineering process and are able to apply logical thinking to solve problems, rather than that you've never failed a class or that you can recite actual subject knowledge from the classes you took. There might be some recruiters that care about grades, but I don't think that grades are a very reliable indication of how good of an engineer you are, and I think most companies today know this and therefore don't really give a shit. Don't really care, and therefore don't really focus on this aspect in selecting applicants. So don't worry too much about your grades and just focus on building your engineering mindset and getting project experience that you can brag about in your next hiring interview. Assumption number 5. You will make a lot of money. Well, okay. This one is kind of true, but with a caveat. It's no secret that engineering salaries are on average higher than in many other professions. And at least in countries with a strong engineering industry, you will probably not have problems finding a well-paying engineering job. But I can almost guarantee you that if you're only doing this for the money, you're gonna have a hard time. Because both engineering school and work life as an engineer are generally quite intense. And if you're not really into engineering, it's just not worth it. There are definitely careers where you can make more money with less effort. And then of course not all engineering fields, not all jobs, and not all careers are created equal. You can definitely find less well-paying engineering jobs, especially if you work at a smaller and younger company or in a popular industry where there's a lot of competition between applicants. So if you care about maximizing your salary, you might want to research what engineering salaries are like in the industry, country, and company size where you want to work, rather than relying on the general impression that engineers make a lot of money. Now, this video is not meant to do any sort of gatekeeping for engineering. I'm all for everyone going into engineering if they want to. If you want to go into engineering, I will be your biggest supporter. In fact, if you need any advice for your studies, you can DM me on Instagram and we can have a chat. I just want you to go into the whole thing with a slightly clearer picture of engineering than what pop culture provides us with. If you like this video, you might also like my video on 5 things I wish I knew before becoming a mechanical engineer. Thank you so much for watching. I really appreciate it, and I hope to see you in my next video. Okay, bye.